Forgive me if this camera angle is kind of goofy. I only have an iPad at home. It's getting to the point if I keep having this little hobby of mine to let go of some thoughts and reviewing things that maybe I should look into getting an actual camera. However, this is what I have. I have an iPad that's on a phone holder for meetings on top of a bunch of textbooks. And I don't know how to get this sucker to zoom out any further than it is. Or having a stack of books that isn't 2 feet tall. So, this is what I've got. I'm always name dropping Dale. Dale, you are. I mean, you're one of the 2 people that watch my videos. So, thanks. I guess thanks for watching. You had posted a video, 2 weeks ago, maybe, of a ancient modern Bible that you had found advertised on, I think you said Facebook. And I was hesitant to buy it, partly because of some monetary issues in my personal life, partly because I already have an NKJV. It's the Orthodox Study Bible. But I actually needed to place an order for something on Amazon for a trip we're going to be going on. So I thought, what the heck? It was on sale for $15, I think. And there's not a lot to complain about for the price. I haven't really read it so much as skimmed it. I'm reading through Matthew right now, and I bought a King James version, the original authorized version, to see what that's like. And since it goes well with the 28 Book of Common Prayer or the Daily Anglican Office, I just felt like that's right. And there is something very poetic about the KJV original, but there's also a lot of lines that are hard to read. So from a study standpoint, I think the NKJV is probably the right move, or the RSV or NRSV. A difference that I have with Dale's is that apparently the version that's on sale nowadays is not that nice. I guess it wouldn't be chambray, but kind of cotton material. This is actually a white textbook-esque, hardcover textbook-esque cover, which actually I think looks pretty good still, considering you can see the binding on it looks actually not bad. I'm not a snob or anything along those lines. I don't know anything about binding, but I think that looks solid. And one of the things that Dale didn't, or if he did, I didn't remember it, look at, is that in the back of the book, besides the art, there's actually, he had it there, a list of sources that are used to discuss the Bible throughout the Old and New Testament. And this is really why I think this Bible is probably worth having, is that you have a lot of the sources you'd expect. You have Augustine, of course, and they list what books he has here. City of God. I'm shocked I'm not seeing Confessions yet. And it's possible that I'm just missing that. But yeah, you've got Ambrose, of course, that makes a lot of sense. Saint Basil the Great, Basil, however that is pronounced. Depends, I guess, who's pronouncing it. I'm sure the Orthodox would have some opinion on it. Athanasius, Lancelot Andrewes. Actually, that I would love to find Lancelot Andrewes' writing on here. For those of you who aren't aware who Lancelot Andrewes is, he is one of the early reformer writers in the Anglican tradition. I don't know if church father of the Anglican Church is a thing, but that would be a fairly good descriptor. And he's known for kind of riding a middle of the road line. I think there's a lot of things that Anglo Catholics would probably really like that that was said by Lancelot, but I think he also at points probably leaned a bit more reformed than maybe I would like. His book, his devotions, I'd really like to pick up at some point. I think Lancelot Andrews presses that, as well as the Nashotah House Theological Seminary in the Anglican tradition. And as I've mentioned in videos past, I am in the Anglican tradition, so I have an interest in an unusual source for a lot of these books being published that happens to be in my tradition. So I think right there, even if you are Orthodox or Catholic, I think it's interesting to have sources that are different than what you would agree with. I'm not a Calvinist, but I would gladly see what Calvin had to say. And, then again, I am, I guess, realistically a Protestant, so maybe that's a little different than if you are a Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox and you think it's anathema to read John Calvin. But yeah, you can see just a bunch of works from said person, John Calvin. A lot of names I don't necessarily I'm not familiar with. See, there's Michael Bird. Actually, that name is familiar, but you see something as new as 2013 being used to discuss this. One of the more interesting topics or authors that I found in here is Jimmy Carter. Now, when we think of Jimmy Carter, we think of the president from 77 to 81 in his presidency. However, if you even just disregard his presidency, Jimmy Carter he's still alive unless something has changed in the last few hours. Jimmy Carter is a pretty religious guy from my understanding, and he does a lot of things that I think many would say follow the gospel. And I know, controversially, maybe if you are a liberal Democrat, I believe Jimmy Carter, as recently as 3 years ago, said that Jesus would not support abortion. He not changes, but he doesn't know so much about the same-sex relationship situation there. He's more in favor of thinking Christ would support that, and I'm not going to get into that at all, because even though I have 4 subscribers, I would like to keep 4 subscribers, and that is a touchy subject right there. He's done a lot of work in the Middle East with peace. He seems to be very interested in racial equality, economic equality, things that, yeah, we're getting into politics a little bit, but that it's obvious that Christ would be in favor of some sort of equality of the races, or economic equality of the people. You're gonna get into, I guess, how one does that and what's fair, but Jimmy Carter, point being, what an odd choice, but so cool. Just because, who would expect? You're just on, let's say, Axe, and here's Jimmy Carter saying, living communally is probably pretty cool, or something along those lines. I cannot imagine this is John Mayer, the singer. If so, we're getting really out there. But everything else, besides me going through the authors, see that I've left that there. everything else seems pretty great. You can see here's a Luther quote. The margins are nice. Considering how much they leave here, I would say you'd kind of wish they'd really fill it up. There's a lot of room here. Look at this. And admittedly, that goes to the next page. But geez, you could fill in another quote. And there are chapters where you would think there'd be commentary. Usually when I look at a study Bible, one of the first things I go to is Matthew 16:18. What, if anything, are they having said there? I don't agree with the Orthodox Study Bible and saying that Matthew 16:18 is referring to Peter's confession. I think that scholarship has said it is Peter being referred to as the rock there. What is up for debate is what does that entail, and then does that transfer to anyone into a papacy? Does it create that? So it's just not having a commentary on one of the most debated chapter and verses is kind of a sin of omission to me a little bit. But if you're buying this for $15, it's hard to say no to that when you get commentaries from, let's see, John Calvin, and then here's an interesting little biography they'll throw in every once in a while. Richard Neubauer. I know the name. I admit I'm not too familiar. And then here's Jeremiah. We see they're going to discuss largely traditional authorship that Christian tradition has stated, things along those lines. And I think that's perfectly okay. I think the audience for this are Christians. They're not going to be scholars. I know that's a debate that goes on. Scholarship, who authored what. Here, Gregory of Nazianzus, one of the Cappadocian Fathers. A nice write-up of him. There's definitely more than just that were important by Gregory of Nazianzus. But this is great. If you are someone, let's see, I started attending church again 3 years ago, and then there's another period where I didn't. But even when I was a Catholic, growing up as a kid, as a Catholic, or in the period in time where I refound my faith, I didn't know who Gregory of Nazianzus is. Or lucky I knew who John the Baptist is. In fact, I remember asking my dad, is John the Baptist who wrote the Gospel of John? And I love my dad. He doesn't know a lot about things as much as I thought he would. He knew that it was the Apostle John is what that's attributed to. So this is just great. Not only my first thought was this is great if you are an evangelical who attends a non-denominational church, because I did that for a point. I think those are. Oh boy, I guess I'm opening up all the cans of worms by talking about same-sex relations and abortion and evangelicals. I think evangelicals are perfectly fine, even if there are social issues or theological issues that I get into. The point I am trying to say is they don't know who Gregory of Nazianzus is. As like I said, there are Catholics probably, there's no way there's not an Orthodox who doesn't know who Gregory of Nazianzus is, or Anglicans, or Lutherans, or Methodists, or anyone else in the mainline or the non-mainline Protestants. This is just a great introduction to read a bit more about church history, see what others thought about church writings, Bible. Let's just see. I'll cut this probably pretty quick, just because I'm covering a lot of it. Charles Spurgeon. There's another writer that I would never usually gravitate towards. I believe he was a 19th century Baptist preacher, and fairly well-known Baptist preacher. He's not just some Jim Bob or whatever derogatory thing people that have apostolic succession like to say about churches. Here, Augustine. There's a guy I don't know, Matthew Henry. Calvin. Calvin gets leaned on a lot, it looks like, and that makes sense. He was very prolific. But we've seen a lot of Augustine, and that makes sense too, because he's done a lot of prolific writing. St. Cyril of Jerusalem, that's pretty sweet. Here's a guy I need to read about, because you thought I knew nothing about Gregory of Nazianzus. I know 0% of things about Gresham. Let's pretend I didn't try to say his name. And I gotta give them credit for this beautiful type they have here. Traditional dating. Actually, I don't know if that's traditional dating or not. I don't keep up with scholarship too much. Book of Malachi. Let's see. Yeah, get more. The fathers probably wrote more about the New Testament, if I'd had to guess. I'm sure I know they definitely wrote about the Old Testament. But you see, N.T. Wright. He's a newer, somewhat critical scholar. That is, I think, a valuable thing to have in here. N.T. Wright, I actually just bought one of his books from Savers about Paul. He's an Anglican priest. I think he's more reformed than I am, for sure. Because, what is the topic that he talked about? Was it iconography? Or, maybe the sacraments or confession or something? Probably not confession. I think that the general confession does the trick, personally. Anyways, he shared one of his views that were not in line with mine, but that's still fascinating. It's interesting to see what people's opinions are. If you're watching this video, apparently you think my opinion is worth beans, at least. So imagine someone who's actually gifted and knowledge on these things that you can just get a little snippet of. And my complaint about there not, well, it's funny now I say it. I was going to say my complaint about this not being filled up looked pretty empty there, because boom, full on right there. That's wonderful. But yeah, Spurgeon, Justin Martyr. I'm just rambling at this point. So takeaways. I think if you can find this for $15 on Amazon, and you're not familiar with all of church history and everyone who's ever written on the Bible, I think it's worth it. I think $15 is a good price. I think $20. If you don't have an NKJV, I think this is worth maybe full price. I don't remember what full price is. $40. And if you're looking for really a pretty ecumenical look into the Bible, this you could do a lot worse. If you're looking for a completely Reformed or a completely Catholic or Lutheran, Orthodox view, probably not. There are obviously books for those groups. One thing I want to check here is for one specific author, if they have them. Yes, my man, Origen, and he is featured prominently. One can debate whether Origen was a heretic, and I don't think one can debate, though, whether Origen was the most important author of the first 3 or 4 centuries of the church. And you can see here, this book definitely appreciates Origen's work, who in the early 1st, 4th century really only could be overshadowed, I'd say, by Augustine. So, again, here's a guy that really traditional Christianity would call apparently a heretic, per supposedly. an ecumenical council. I don't know enough about that. I know David Bentley Hart has his statements about I think it was the 6th or 5th ecumenical council, a forgery when they condemned Origen. Okay, again, just rambling again. Takeaways, like I said, worth it. One thing to not do is please don't yell at me for saying abortion is, what did I even say? Condemned by Jimmy Carter. I'm not sharing my opinion on that topic. I'm not sharing my opinion on the concept of, or not concept, the discussion of LGBT marriage. I think you guys might be able to infer somewhat what I believe. I am also an Episcopalian, and that means I can believe pretty much any spectrum of things. Not that I can, but that we do hold a very wide spectrum of things. All right. Have a good night, everybody.